that was a very generous introduction. Thank you all for the warm welcome. I love being in a room full of nerds, my kind of people. So I want to say thank you to NERA and to CAP for pulling everybody together for this conference. I think it's terrific. I love a chance to get together and talk about ideas. So a lot of folks in this room would tell you that costs are way up and Donald Trump is to blame. Kind of a simple message here. And it is true. And it is a big reason why Donald Trump's approval ratings have now reached record lows. But Americans are angry and have been angry for a very long time because costs have been going up for decades under both Republican and Democratic administrations. If we want to win the 2026 midterms and have a fighting chance in 2028, then we need to convince Americans that we're serious about taking on the big fights and lowering costs. I think it's that straightforward. And that means we have to do more than just general hand waving. The hand waving's been going on for a long time. What it means is specific proposals that would make meaningful differences in people's lives. Specific proposals that we are willing to be held accountable for delivering on. And I think the right place to start is with childcare. Now, childcare costs have risen at twice the rate of inflation. In 47 out of 50 states, families are paying more for childcare for 2 kids than rent for their whole family. And under Donald Trump, the crisis has gotten worse. Now, I've told the story many times. As a young mom, I was about an inch away from quitting my job before my Aunt Bee moved in to help with childcare. That was 40 years ago, and the problem has only gotten worse. And newsflash, not everybody has an Aunt Bee. So today, half of all children live in childcare deserts, meaning there are 2 or 3 children lined up who need care for every 1 care slot that is available. If you are lucky today in America, you might get a spot for your infant if you started today in 6 months. And then again, you might get stuck on a 2-year wait list for the privilege of paying $20,000 plus a year. So the question is, how did we get here? How did this one get so hard over time? The answer is just plain old Econ 101, supply and demand. Prices are high because lots of families need care and there's nowhere near enough care providers. So why aren't there enough care providers? Why aren't there enough child care workers? Again, Econ 101. There aren't enough workers because those workers are typically paid at rates lower than Uber drivers. So why not pay them more? Well, typically when you need more workers, you just pay them more. But families are already getting flattened by sky-high costs for care, and they just simply cannot afford to pay more. In other words, the private market has not and cannot solve the child care market problem. The only way to develop adequate child care is for the government to fill the gap by investing in families and workers. And look, it would be a smart investment with huge payoffs. Workers would be paid commensurate with the training and responsibilities that they take on. Babies get a very strong start in life, and families get a huge cost relief. As a nation, we support our economy right now by investing in roads and bridges and education so that all of our businesses and all of our workers can prosper. It is time to do the same for childcare. Make this investment so that mamas and daddies can work, and we will all see the payoff. Childcare shouldn't be a privilege reserved for a handful of the wealthy. Childcare is public infrastructure that makes our communities and our businesses flourish. And you can applaud that. Look, but I want to talk about how we get there, because here's a part where the story takes a little bit of a twist. When I ran for president in 2020, I talked about childcare literally at every single stop. While every other Democrat supported expanding childcare, it just wasn't the key thing that they talked about. So when Joe Biden was elected, we were in the throes of COVID pandemic, and it ripped back the curtain on just how fragile our cobbled together childcare system really is. Everybody faced it head on at that point. And for the first time in a long time, we had the Democratic trifecta, the House, the Senate, the White House. To me, I thought, this is it. This is the golden chance. This is our moment to deliver universal child care. And I want to be clear, I was not alone in fighting for child care. Patty Murray and I burned up the phone lines as we strategized with each other over how to get a child care bill across the finish line. The advocates were out. They circulated data, they told the stories, they got them published, they brought families to the Hill to testify about the differences that a good child care program could make. And just like in 2020, almost every Democrat would tell you, if asked, sure, they supported child care. But not enough were willing to fight for it. They were largely just checking the box. The law the Democrats were putting together, Build Back Better, was never about how to build a robust, effective child care system. Never. Instead, it was an exercise in how weak and how ineffective we could make the child care program and still call it child care. How little could we invest in order to keep the price tag under an artificial cap? How much could we discourage states from implementing the program so the cost on paper wouldn't scare Joe Manchin, or the tax policies on the other side of the ledger wouldn't make Kyrsten Sinema give a little curtsy and vote no? That was a frustrating, aggravating process right up until the minute that child care dropped off the bill entirely. We lost child care because not enough Democrats who were already in office were actually willing to fight for it. They just backed off. And I believe down to my bones that Democrats who think there is no reward for fighting to deliver universal child care are just dead wrong. Today, cities and states across the country are the ones who are actually leading the charge here. Democrats like Governor Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Governor Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mayor Mamdani in New York. Yes, all of them. Think about those three. They all campaigned aggressively on increasing access to child care, and they all won. And I give them huge respect for that. But to deliver big for every American family, to have this influence every election, states and cities can't be left to do this alone. And here's the good news. They don't need to. Universal child care isn't just good policy, it is also good politics. Take a look at the Republican Party on the question of child care. They are fumbling the child care issue now at the most basic level. Vice President J.D. Vance's solution, just have the grandparents move next door. Heck of a solution, J.D. Last month, Donald Trump said out loud on camera that we can't, quote, take care of child care because we have to dump $1 billion a day into a war halfway around the world with Iran. So much for America first. Look, it would be political malpractice for Democrats not to be talking about childcare every chance we get going into the midterms and beyond. When I look at the upcoming Democratic presidential primary, every 2028 candidate who understands what's happening in this country, who wants to win, and who will deliver for families will make universal child care a core piece of their agenda. Yep. So, how do we get it done? First, cover everyone. We cannot be afraid of big structural change. And that means affordable, high quality care for every single American family. Look, Social Security is the most popular government program ever. And the reason is because it benefits everyone. And the same should be true of childcare. Every parent, every employer, every worker needs to see exactly how a child care program will work for them. We must cover all families and keep prices manageable for all families. Let me give you an example. For the typical family who might be paying today $25,000 a year for child care, the proposal we've put together would save them $15,000 a year every year. Oh, and just to draw a line on this, for every mother, a single mother making $60,000 a year, she'd pay nothing at all. And that is a big deal. So that's number one. Make it apply to everyone, make it affordable for everyone. And number two, speed. Speed. We need to deliver quickly to solve the affordability crisis that is flattening families right now. I'm talking months, not years. And the only reason I'm talking months instead of years is because my team keeps telling me I can't talk weeks. But that's how we need to be thinking of this. And that is the kind of urgency we need to bring to this. And again, remember what happened last time the Democrats were in power. Talented, dedicated folks put together a whole lot of really good policy ideas, but speed was never baked in. So it took a long time for those investments to help families. Some benefits, like Medicare drug negotiations, were actually passed into law, but they were deliberately set up so that the price cuts would not kick in until years later. So when the election rolled around and people asked themselves, hey, what have the Democrats done for me? Too many of them felt the answer was not enough, or even worse, nothing at all. Our new child care proposal needs to get resources to states and localities right away. And that means setting up strike teams to help states and cities create more child care slots now. It means helping neighbors who babysit get licensed so they are eligible. It means rethinking regulations that are keeping out new providers. And yes, absolutely, we need to keep our kids safe. And yes, we need all kinds of providers who can meet those standards so that we have abundant, affordable, high-quality child care for every family in America. And the time to do this, to get it together, is now. When we get the next Democratic trifecta, we need legislation that is ready to pass on day one. And our legislation should make it possible for parents to access that care at a minimum in the very same year. Some people might say that's unrealistic. I say you don't get what you don't fight for. Now, I am putting my money where my mouth is on this. I have teamed up with the top Democratic appropriator, Senator Patty Murray, the top House Democrat for education, Bobby Scott, and the outstanding Congresswoman from New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The four of us are doing the hard policy work right now, the nuts and bolts, the wiring. Here's how the pieces will work. Here's how we get the money in. Here's how we get the money back out. We are working on a draft bill that will be ready as the day one solution when we take back power. And we need every Democrat, whether they are in office now or whether they are running for office, on board. Can I get an amen on that one? We got to make them do this. Look, it is a tough time. Costs, including the cost of child care, are crushing American families. And Donald Trump is too busy starting wars and lining his own pockets to care. We are in a fight to deliver for the American people, not to talk, but to deliver, to lower costs that are keeping people up at night and to give people some hope by showing them what it looks like to have a government that is on their side. The impact of universal, affordable childcare for all families would be truly seismic. It would mean a single mother could go back to school and get her nursing license. It would mean a young couple could start that small business they've been dreaming of. It would mean a family could start setting aside money for a down payment on a house. It would be life-changing for literally millions of people across this country. And whether you have kids or not, whether you like kids or not, I know some of you out there. I think, kids. Universal child care is truly the best investment we can make in strengthening our middle class. And that should matter to everyone. As Democrats go around the country over the next 5 months and ask people to vote for us, every single one of us should be talking about child care. We can take back Congress, then we can take back the White House, and then we can deliver universal child care and help rebuild America's middle class. Thank you all.